Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. As we all know, the United States is nearly $37 trillion in debt. So when I say something like that, it's like, well, Kamik, what the hell does that mean? What does it mean that the US owes $37 trillion? And the short version of that answer is our lives are getting more and more expensive every day because the government can't get any country, they're getting less and less countries every day to purchase their government bonds. And if the government doesn't have a country to purchase their bonds or individuals, then they have to print the money so that they could fund the government. Now, that is a very 50,000 foot view of that, of how that works. But basically, if people aren't buying government debt, aka paper money, aka dollars, then the Federal Reserve, the Secretary of Treasury, they need to continue to print more currency. And I call that obviously currency dilution or legal counterfeiting. But it's not a good thing that the debt keeps going up. And because of that, more and more people are finding ways to store their wealth in money that a government cannot print, which is gold or Bitcoin. And I feel like this administration is flagging what is happening and saying the quiet part out loud, but you just have to be listening to catch it. Now, check out this quick clip of Scott Bessent with Carlson, where he talks about Bitcoin is becoming a store of value.
There are a lot of different stores of value over time. Bitcoin's becoming a store of value. Gold has historically been a store of value.
So look at that. The Treasury Secretary of the United States is making clear that Bitcoin is becoming a store of value because it is a store of value. And countries are using it, and countries are using gold as well. Why? Is because they see inflation keeps getting higher and higher. So the dollars that they have been saving from the US are buying them less and less. So, what is a country to do? What is an individual to do? What is a business to do? They need to save in a money that cannot be printed, and that is Bitcoin and gold. Obviously, we know which is the better alternative, gold, Bitcoin. Sorry, but yes, it's these countries and people that are all saving in Bitcoin. And again, the U.S. is saying the quiet part out loud, and they're telling people this. Not necessarily just by their words, by their actions. Now, look at this. Obviously, back in March, the establishment of the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve back in March 6th. I tell people, why is the United States establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve? Why not dollars? Why not anything else? It's because Bitcoin is the best form of money that cannot be printed. And what I want to convey in this video is that if you're not holding Bitcoin, you see countries adopting Bitcoin, you see the Treasury Secretary of the United States saying Bitcoin is becoming a store of value, and other countries and individuals are also holding Bitcoin. So if you aren't holding Bitcoin, please, I ask you, $10 a week, $20 a week, it doesn't matter. Get off zero. You can save in Bitcoin on apps like Strike, on Cashapp. I will link to those in the video description below. And I was also watching this podcast called the All In Podcast, which I don't know too much about, but I started watching it a couple of weeks ago, and basically one of the billionaires on the podcast, and the podcast is obviously hosted also by the crypto czar David Sachs, who's on the show, who works in the current White House. But you can hear what they have to say about what countries are doing with Bitcoin and gold. Take a listen.
That the market does not want to buy the debt from the government. Rates are now climbing, and that creates a massive problem for the government.
Okay, Chamath, you've been tweeting about this.
I think we have to be careful here. This thing is like anti-Doge. And so what will the implications be as rates go to those levels? You'll de-lever from the United States. You'll sell US debt. You'll own things like gold and Bitcoin. If you're curious about what's happening to gold and Bitcoin, they started to spike in the last few.
So look at that. People are saying and getting the quiet part out loud that Bitcoin and gold are assets that cannot be printed. Now, the unfortunate truth is, regardless of who is in office, whether you are Trump or whether you are on the Democrat side, they all have to continue printing money. There's no way to stop this train. Nothing stopped this train, as Lynn Alden says, to quote Breaking Bad. So it's not a Democrat or a Republican issue. It's that the money is broken. And all the United States can do is the best that they can in terms of lowering taxes for individuals and businesses so that people can take and keep more of their money and not give it all to the government who is going to print the currency anyway. And they can lower taxes, but it's up to us to understand that if you're holding your money in dollars over the next couple of years, you're going to lose to inflation. Things are going to cost more for you. Life is going to continue to get harder and more expensive. But they can't tell you to just go buy gold and Bitcoin, especially Bitcoin. They can't just say, hey, everyone, go buy Bitcoin. What they can do and what they are doing is slowly but surely flagging with their words as well as their actions, where you see things like the Treasury Secretary saying Bitcoin is slowly becoming a store of value. You see the establishment of the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, and then you see people in the financial industry are slowly understanding that countries are delevering from the dollar system because the dollars are buying them less and less. So again, they're buying a money that someone cannot print, Bitcoin. So if you're not holding Bitcoin, definitely keep asking questions and keep stacking sats because that's how we are going to protect ourselves. And again, I feel like when people see headlines like this, we have to ask ourselves why. Why is the US establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve? Why is the Treasury Secretary saying that Bitcoin is becoming a store of value? One thing I want to pass on to my son is to ask as many questions as possible because when you start pulling the onion, you get there eventually to the root of the problem. And all these countries and the United States know that they can't hold the line for but so long because they have to continue to keep printing money. All they can do is signal to people where to store their money for the future. And if you haven't realized from this video, the best place to store your money for the future, especially if your time horizon is 4 years, 8 years, 10 years, 25 years, is to store it in Bitcoin. Again, you can use Cashapp, you can use Strike, set a weekly DCA, just get off to zero. So, with that said, keep asking questions, keep stacking sats, and I'll catch you on the next one.